Hi, everybody. My name is Lynne McTaggart. Welcome to my podcast, Living the New Science. In these podcasts, I'm covering some extraordinary discoveries by frontier scientists and other new thought leaders and why this changes everything we think about, how our world works, and also how we should live our lives. So today, I'm thrilled to have on Dr. Margaret Paul. Dr. Paul is the author and co-author of several international best-selling books, including Do I Have to Give Up Me to Be Loved by You?, Inner Bonding, and many more. She holds a PhD in psychology. She's a relationship expert. She's a noted public speaker, workshop leader, educator, chaplain, consultant, and artist. She's passionate about helping people rapidly heal the root cause of their pain and learn the path to joy and loving relationships. And I know her also as being a wizard when it comes to a health crisis. So welcome, Margaret. And she's a friend of mine and part of my Power of Eight group that meets every Monday. So welcome, Margaret.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm happy to be here with you.
Great. So let's start talking about your partner, Erica Chopech, and her health crisis. Please tell us what happened.
So Erica is the co-creator of the process that we created, Inner Bonding, and we have been friends for 38 years. And in April, she had a stroke at the base of her in the pons. She had a stroke. She had been suffering from long haul COVID for about 2.5 years, and that is one of the results of long COVID. So she was in the hospital, and one of the things she had the presence of mind to do is to tell me before they came and got her to pick up the photonic torch that we have. It's called the McLaren torch. I don't know how she thought of that while she was having a stroke, but I did, and I snuck it in to the hospital room because they would have taken it away from her. And she hid it, and she started using it on her throat and on her brain immediately. The hospital was horrible. They did 6 CAT scans in 24 hours, which is toxic. And then the very next day, the hospital doctor came in and I was standing there with another friend, started screaming at her and saying, you have to go to rehab for 4 months, and you're going to need a feeding tube for 5 to 6 months, or you're going to die. If you don't do what we say, you're going to die. That was the energy. And knowing that we were psychologists, she said, you can't heal this with your mind. And I can't remember whether it was me or Erica who said, you don't know this, you don't know that. And so we actually got Erica out of that hospital and got her into another one, which was much better. She was in the hospital for a total of 4 days. She was eating pureed foods right away. The photonic torch allowed her to start to eat. She had to use a suction in order to even be able to breathe for the first couple of days. But after that, with the photonic torch, she started being able to breathe and eat pureed foods within a couple of weeks. She was eating regular food. She was up and around. She was walking with a walker, but I think within 2 weeks, she was done with the walker. And she's a horse trainer. And within 2 weeks, she was out training horses again. But one of the things that happened with the CAT scan is that they discovered cancer at the base of her tongue. So, of course, what they wanted to do is all kinds of awful things that doctors do, and she would not allow it. And so we did our research with a number of chiropractors who were very well educated in this, and we used targeted supplements to deal with it. And they were very, very powerful. You wrote about them in your article. And then she had a specialized test for squamous cell, which is what it is that we sent to the Mayo Clinic. And she got a clean bill of health after 4.5 months.
So she used several things. Now there was a McLaren torch, and just tell us, what is that? That's red infrared light?
Yeah, it's infrared light. He is actually a vet in Australia, and he invented this torch for horses. And one of the things that horses die of very often is called founder, which is that their hooves go bad, and there's very little you can do about it. Well, with the torch, I think he said they have 97% heal rate with the McLaren torch. So we started using it with our horses, and then we started using it with ourselves. And it's like, if you know the acupuncture meridians, you can use it that way. You can use it on muscles. You can use it on pain. It's amazing. And he's recently come out with a new one that we also got that has pulse. It's a pulsing. And so it is very much like acupuncture. And we use this all the time on ourselves and on our animals. And it's just one of the most powerful things available.
Well, we see this too in, as you mentioned, my magazine, What Doctors Don't Tell You. We have written numerous articles about infrared light being used now for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, many conditions. They're finding out the extraordinary healing effects of it. Rheumatoid arthritis, even if you want a little non-surgical facelift, you can use it. It's really quite amazing stuff. Now, aside from that, you also used, you had a chiropractor
Yes.
and a movement specialist, Annette Benyel, who does a really souped up form of Feldenkrais. So tell me a little bit about some of the things that they did.
Yeah. Well, before we go to that, the McLaren torch is a cold laser. I don't know if it's exactly the same as what you were talking about. It is a cold laser. Anyway, while Erica was in the hospital, Annette Benyel is a friend of ours, and she actually came on Zoom while Erica was in the hospital and started to work with her magic. And then she worked with us a number of times over Zoom to give Erica exercises to get her voice back, mainly her vocal cords. And also Erica has some paralysis on her right side. It's getting better, but I mean, she can walk and do everything, but there's numbness there. And so she was there to help us with that. The chiropractor did some magic. He doesn't live where we live. He comes in once a month, and he worked on her, and a lot of things changed as a result of that as well. So
was that physical manipulation?
You know, it was actually mostly with the cold laser. Mm-hmm. He knew how to use the cold laser along with touching different parts of the body. It wasn't so much manipulation. It was mostly how to use the cold laser.
I think this is so interesting because it's demonstrating that energy, light, these are really the medicines of the future.
That's right.
They're really, and they're demonstrating the ability to bring back the impossible, at least the impossible according to the standard medical model. So she was diagnosed, and the prognosis was she was going to be in the hospital for 5 or 6 months. She was going to need a feeding tube, and she's now, other than numbness, she is talking, walking, healed herself from cancer, et cetera, in a matter of months.
Amazing. Yeah, she's still in a healing process, but it's going to go on for a while. She had a beautiful singing voice, and she can't sing yet again, and hopefully she will be able to. Mm-hmm. But you wouldn't know looking at her that she had a stroke. There's nothing that would show you that.
No, this was hemorrhagic stroke, one of the worst too.
Yes, that's right. One of the most life-threatening. That's right.
Right. Okay. So what I'm really interested in too, Margaret, is the attitude that you took, that Erica took. I mean, here were doctors bearing down on you both, saying, this is terrible, giving her terrible prognosis. You don't do this, you're going to die, et cetera, et cetera. Tell me about the mindset that enabled both of you to defy that and to keep positive.
Well, First of all, I have known for so many years that most doctors know nothing, that they just don't know what they're talking about. And so I have rarely been to doctors. I mean, I think they're great if you break your arm, but for most things, they just don't know anything. And so that's why I've done so much of my own research. And Erica was in a medical field, and she also knew that they didn't know anything. And both of us have worked very hard on trusting ourselves, trusting our inner knowing, and trusting our higher guidance. And so even though she was in that life-threatening situation, we were staying connected to ourselves, to spirit, about what was right for her and not giving authority away. And this is, I think, the most important thing, is to not give your authority away to people who say they know. And I don't care who it is, a doctor, an attorney, I don't care what it is. I don't give my authority away to others. I tune in and I tune up and I listen to what I'm being told is right. And so we both did that. And I'll tell you, that hospital experience was so horrendous because when, first of all, the nurses came in that night and started yelling at her that you've got to listen to the doctor. I mean, it wasn't just the doctor. They're yelling at her and yelling at her. So she called and she says, I got to get out of here. And so a friend of ours went to get her. We asked for a wheelchair. They wouldn't give it. They wouldn't give an ambulance. We had to take her in the car in a life-threatening situation. They told her that if she left, Medicare wouldn't pay and she'd have $1 million doctor bill. We asked to have the IVs removed and they said, no, a doctor has to come, and the doctor wouldn't come as a way to keep her there. So we just took the tube out and left, and they started screaming at us and they finally took it out. They said, the police are going to go after you. I mean, can you imagine this?
My goodness, I need to talk to them a bit. They need some communication skill training. But
Yes.
I think this is the key problem.
Yeah.
And it's not just the standard medical profession either that have an issue with communication skills. Because, I mean, as you know, Margaret, my work is all about the power of intention, thoughts and words. And what I've done is I've been studying thoughts and words and the thoughts and words of practitioners for many decades now. And what I've found is that that is probably a practitioner's best or worst medicine.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. You have a perfect example anyway in Erica. There is nothing that any of those people said, any of those so-called healing professionals said, that would be in any way healing. And what they don't understand, and they should, because there's been plenty of evidence about this, is that it almost doesn't matter what medicine they give. It almost doesn't matter. Their biggest medicine, their worst medicine, is their thoughts and words. An example comes from Harvard, for instance. Ted Kapchuk has been studying the whole power of thoughts and words for many years, professor of Harvard. And he did one study of patients with carpal tunnel syndrome. And he divided them into two groups. One group got pills, pain pills. The other group got acupuncture. Now, about a third of all of the patients, I think there were over 200 patients, were ill from side effects, really ill, took to their beds. But a majority healed, and the vast majority of people who got acupuncture healed. But here's the kicker to the study. The pills were cornstarch, and the acupuncture was sham acupuncture. What happened was the people who believed they were going to get ill from side effects did. The people who believed they were going to heal did. And we see this even with negative studies. There's another study of patients with asthma. They were given an inhaler and told it was going to have allergens in it. And about half had a full-blown asthma attack. But here's the thing. The inhaler had saline in it, salt water. It was the thought of something negative, thought of having an allergen that kicked off the whole response. So what I see, and probably one of the most telling studies, looked at the difference between the outcomes in patients given a placebo, all given a placebo, between a doctor saying to them, we can handle that, you're going to get better, compared to a doctor saying, well, I don't know if we can handle this. We'll give it a try. We'll give you some medicine, but I don't know if it's going to work. The difference in outcomes was 61%. 61% more people got better with a positive attitude from their doctors. So that's why I have decided to put together a course that I run every year called Become a Better Healer with the Power of 8, because I've found that even alternative therapists, doctors of every persuasion take, and healing professionals take this course, because I found just about everybody could do with understanding much more about the effect of their thoughts and words. So it's not just the words, but also their thoughts about their patients. One of the things that's amazing about intention is we're all essentially leaky buckets. We're all sending out our thoughts 24/7. We've got about 70,000 of them a day. And we think that the universe is only going to hear those intentions that we send out via a power of thought. We meditate in the morning, we do our power thought. That's the only thing the universe hears. But we are broadcasting. We're very loud broadcasters 24/7. So if you are thinking all the time that your patient is a goner, or this isn't going to work very well, or, well, you've got to have a feeding tube for 6 months, well, guess what? Most likely that will come to pass. So I find people really do need that kind of education about that, becoming a cheerleader for hope, but really modifying their intentions too, understanding that just their thinking about their patient is going to affect them.
Yeah. Your work and mine are like hand in glove, because the essence of the inner bonding process is that there's only two intentions. And one is the intention to control, to resist, to avoid pain. And the other is the intention to learn about loving yourself and sharing your love with others. And so there's only those two intentions. And so we teach everybody about that. And that is very powerful for people to become aware, like what you're talking about, becoming aware of the intention. I have many clients. I've worked for years with trauma, and I've had clients come to me and say, I've been told that you can't heal trauma. Well, I help people heal trauma all the time. But those words that people have said, that therapists have said to them, you cannot heal from this trauma. And I have worked with the people with the absolute worst trauma. And I say, yes, you can heal. And here's how. And they do.
Oh, absolutely. And it is, it's one of the things that I do in another class about healing your past is using intention, but going back in time. Yeah. And so absolutely, there is nothing on this planet that can't be healed. There's nothing on this planet. Now, it doesn't mean you are definitely going to have 100% healing, or that everybody on the planet is going to heal, but there is the potential there. And, I found it with my own situation. I had a health crisis a few years ago myself. And I remember going to all kinds of alternative practitioners who were brilliant in every regard. But I actually started taking notes, Margaret. I was so shocked by their language. I remember somebody who's supposed to be really high up there in the intention work saying to me, it's going to be a long and painful process. So I noted that down. And then I had somebody else. My favorite was, and people characterizing, this must hurt. And I said, no, it doesn't hurt. Telling you what you should feel. But my favorite of all was, oh, you're a shadow of your former self. And I
Well,
thought, what is that going to do? I mean, luckily I am ornery enough and I'm a bit like Erica in saying, no, thank you. But I finally realized that the one healing professional who really changed my life said to me, you know, if we go through this procedure, I said, well, what can I do? And she said, skydiving, maybe. And I thought, yes, this is the person. This is the person. Because all of a sudden, what happened to me in my head was, oh, water skiing, dancing, all of the things I wasn't doing at the moment, I was suddenly able to do. And it's true, I can now do them all. But I haven't tried water skiing recently, but everything else, definitely. So that's one issue. But I think what also practitioners don't understand is they can create a whole mental situation with their patients. Not only do they have to be cheerleaders by using the right language, but for instance, there are ways to create a healing space. The science demonstrates that when you do healing in the same place in a particular kind of space, it conditions the space and it works faster and better.
right.
So I talk to practitioners a lot about that. I also talk to them about a lot of visualization and mentally rehearsing, but also getting their patients to mentally rehearse getting better, because it's like elite athletes. Any elite athlete worth his salt, from Muhammad Ali onward, engaged in mental rehearsal.
That's right.
Now there's pretty much physical equivalence between elite athletes. So what makes the difference is mental rehearsal. So that can easily be applied to healing too. And I show practitioners, demonstrate to them they can do it, but they can also show their patients how to do it.
I also encourage people. I work with a lot of relationships, and as you know, people can go right into trying to control in their relationships. And one of the things that we develop in the inner bonding process is what we call the loving adult, which is the higher functioning in the brain. But a lot of people don't have that because they didn't have it role modeled. And one of the things I encourage people, which is what I did when I started learning the process, is every time I got upset or I gave myself up or I got angry or I withdrew or I did any of these protective mechanisms, which are not loving, I went to the drawing board and I wrote out what would have been loving and I rehearsed it like a play. And that creates new neural pathways in the brain. And I think that's what you're talking about, creating new neural pathways in the higher brain for thoughts that are in our highest good, thoughts that are loving to ourselves and to others, rather than the kinds of negative thoughts that keep us ill.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I do right away with practitioners is say, okay, walk around with a notebook and write down everything you're thinking. Is every time you remember it for a week. And they are all shocked at what they think about their patients. And also, as they start talking to their patients, uncovering what you just said, a key piece is relationships. The diagnosis is not the why they got ill. I mean,
No.
there's a study that was done showing one single little argument can delay wound healing by an entire day.
Yeah.
So relationships, the diagnosis isn't the why they got sick. And most of the time it isn't just, of course it can be, it can be the food they're eating. It can be the lack of certain nutrients. It can also be something they're eating that they shouldn't be eating, like something with Roundup in it, or something with lots of poisons in it, or processed foods or whatever. But there's also that other side. There are, as Dr. Leo Gallen said, 4 pillars of healing. And one of the biggest ones, there's relationships and community. One of the biggest ones of all. When we look at heart attacks, about half of people, they reckon, don't have high cholesterol, any of the risk factors. Right. They're lonely. They're simply lonely. And the evidence demonstrates that community bonding, shields us from not only heart attacks, from stroke and even the common cold. So one of the things that I help practitioners do, is examine the beyond the diagnosis and beyond the physical elements to what's going on in their lives, particularly with relationships and community,
Right.
and find whether or not that's lacking, because that is most likely one big piece of why they're ill. So there's that, and also the patients that aren't getting better, uncovering what is it that's blocking them from getting better. And usually that has to do with uncovering thought patterns that they have that are blocking their healing. Like you talked about, people who don't know how to be loving, they don't have that blueprint. So you have to be more of an investigator about that. And we demonstrate that, but also give them a blueprint for their patients to change their thought patterns. So their patients' intentions are huge in this process. It really is about creating this healing relationship between you two, you practitioner and your patient, and going beyond the physical, because that is the place that we see healing most of all.
I get so many clients, especially women, who have cancer, and
Yes.
invariably underneath that is they've been giving themselves up. They've been people pleasing. They have no sense of self-worth. They're very caring people, and they're caring about everybody else except themselves, which you and I have talked about somebody earlier.
Yes.
So easy for caring people to discount themselves and to just give and give and give until they're completely depleted. And so they need to learn what it means to love themselves. And if the practitioners are not, if the doctors, the therapists are not loving themselves, they can't teach that.
No, absolutely. And, I'm so interested with cancer. The Institute of Noetic Sciences has got a database about spontaneous healing. And they've demonstrated that, many cancers have a huge percentage where cancer just goes away. And so it is with lots of other illnesses too. But when you drill down, I was fascinated by the book by Kelly Turner, Radical Remission. Now, she looked at lots of patients with cancer who were supposedly no-hopers. They didn't have a chance in hell of getting better, but they did. And so she wanted to see what was the common factors among all of these people who had defied the odds. And she found 9 major things they all did. But here was the interesting part of it. Of course, there was diet, and there was change of diet, taking supplements and herbs and things like that. But 7 of the 9 had nothing to do with a physical change. It was all about changing thoughts. It was about taking control, surrounding yourself with loving people, having a strong spiritual connection, and so on. It was all about thoughts, emotions, and words. And what they find, as you say, it's about, oftentimes with cancer, it is somebody feeling like essentially they're a trapped rat. They are in a situation where they're giving and not receiving at all. And we find when people change that mindset, they quit the soulless job, they leave the abusive husband, whatever it is, they start standing up for themselves, the cancer changes. And that is really the case with every kind of illness too. So it's about understanding that enormous role that thoughts play.
Right. Right.
There's, as you and I have experienced, because we've had this Power of Eight group now, we started to help one member of a organization we belong to, and it just snowballed from there. And we've been meeting for, it's been over 2 years now, probably close to 3, and we've seen many, many successes. So one of the other elements that's really key in what I teach is the power of a small group to heal. The Power of Eight, I call it, and it doesn't have to be 8, but that became a name when I was kicking around the idea of how to show group intention in a workshop. This is back in 2008, and I was kicking it around with my husband one day, and I said, oh, I don't know, maybe I'll put people in groups of 8 or so and have them send healing intention to a member of the group with a health challenge. And I wanted to do this because I had run these massive intention experiments with thousands of participants, working with scientists, measuring the effect of our intentions. And, we have run 40 to date. 36 have shown measurable, positive, mostly significant effects. But back then, we'd had some successes, and I was trying to figure out, how do I scale this down to a small workshop? And so when we did this, when I said, oh, I don't know, I'll put them in groups of 8 or so, my husband, Brian, who is a journalist as well, turned to me and he said, I love that, the Power of 8. And that's how the name of this whole modality started. But as I say, 8 is kind of a sweet spot. It has all of those wonderful symbols. It's a sideways infinity sign. It is good luck in China and so forth. It has huge, huge mythological connotations. But you can do it with 6, you can do it with 12, you can do it with 15. It just needs to be a small group. But one thing I really help practitioners with is the science is absolutely clear here. Altruism is like a bulletproof vest. And people who focus excessively on the self are more likely to be depressed, and they're more likely to be ill. So invariably, because I teach big Power of 8 group sessions with various courses, including a year-long thing called the Power of 8 Intention Masterclass, when people aren't getting better, I will oftentimes say to them, get off of yourself. Stop intending for yourself. Start intending for someone else and see what happens. And remarkably, it's almost always when things shift. And I see it hugely in all kinds of groups. So we see that, and we see it in the science of altruism. It's so powerful. Altruism, as I say, is like a bulletproof vest. People who do things for other people live longer, healthier, happier lives, even if it is volunteering, even if it is taking your neighbor's garbage out, anything like that, getting off of yourself is so healing. So one thing that I've been working with practitioners to do is to put particularly patients with the same condition, if you can, put them in a group, have them do healing intention for each other. Now, I've been running thousands of Power of 8 groups. We've had 2 people get up out of their wheelchairs, 1 paralyzed from the neck down. We've had countless cancer patients reverse their cancer. We've had people do all kinds of things. I remember one woman had she was due to have knee surgery. We did 1 power. This is somebody coming to a talk of mine. So she's in the audience, only heard this once, does an intention, and is able to do a deep squat afterward and able to cancel her surgery. I followed it up. So there are many things that work, and countless stories like this where people did it once and it changed their lives. But if they meet regularly, even more so. But there's a lot of things, and as I say, there is the altruism piece. It's a huge piece of it. But there is also a really fascinating thing that happens with Power of 8 groups. We've done brainwave studies on Power of 8 groups to try to figure out, well, how come this is working? Why are these people healing so quickly? So we got together a group of student volunteers at Life University, which is one of the largest and most prestigious chiropractic universities in the world. And we put people into groups, gave them some rudimentary instruction, and put an EEG cap on one member of each group. And we expected to see a brainwave signature that was identical to meditation, to that of meditation. The neuroscientists who ran the study were as shocked as I was when they discovered that it looked nothing like meditation. The brainwave signatures we were recording looked almost identical to those of Sufi masters during chanting or Buddhist monks during ecstatic prayer. The parts of the brain that make us feel separate, like the parietal lobes that sit back here toward the back of the head, and the right frontal lobes involved in worry, doubt, negativity, they were all dialed way down. So these were people essentially in a state of ecstatic oneness. And I think oneness is the big power of a small group.
Yes.
That's the secret sauce, because we don't get to experience that almost ever. We experience our lives as being, separate and individualistic. And here suddenly people are with a small group of strangers who are sending loving intention to them. And that, I believe, is the big secret sauce to
Well, I so agree with you, Lynn, because I've written a lot about oneness, because if people actually felt their oneness with themselves and with each other, the whole world would change. You can't hurt people if you feel oneness with them. There would be no racism or misogyny or any of that if people felt their oneness, because they would be feeling their own true essence and each other's. And you can't hurt people when when you feel that level of oneness. So I'm excited to hear you say that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so interesting to see how our work dovetails, Margaret. No, it is so important because, we talk about entering the field. A lot of people ask me, how do you enter the field? And my answer to that is, you're already in the field. You are the field. Your subatomic particles are doing a little dance with all the other subatomic particles in the world, and you're all already there. The problem is we don't experience life as that. Don't experience life as oneness. And our scientific story that we've grown up with has been this out-of-date Newtonian story.
Yeah, that's
really
right.
talks to us about, life being all part of little individual things that are very well-behaved objects operating according to fixed laws in time and space.
Right.
But the new science is showing something very, very different now, where we are all part of this giant energy field, and we exist essentially beyond time and space. So we don't get to feel that, though, but you do in a Power of 8 group.
Well, people don't feel it when they're focused up here in their mind. They have to be in their heart, they have to be in their soul, and they have to be connected. You were talking about the infinity symbol, and I often tell people what they have to do is, here's the infinity symbol, right side up. They have to create an inner family where they're in their heart as a loving adult, they're connected to their true soul essence, and they're connected with their higher guidance in a flow. And when they can do that on the inner level, then that infinity starts to work on the outer level with others. And it's so beautiful to see when people learn to do that.
Wow, that is so powerful, Margaret. And it's so interesting to think about the symbols about with that too. That is so great. But that's it. I mean, it's so sad that our life and the life we've constructed for ourselves is all about competitive individualism, when it's just, it is the exact opposite that we need, and the exact opposite that allows us to flourish, as you say. So when you call it inner bonding, can you just define that for everybody listening?
Inner bonding is actually a very powerful 6-step process of learning to stop abandoning ourselves, stop rejecting ourselves, learning to connect with who we truly are, define our own true self, develop that loving adult, and connect with our higher source of love and truth and wisdom, so that we're actually loving ourselves throughout a day. And we're able then, because we're all filled up with love, we're then able to share that love with others. Whereas, as you know, in so many relationships, people come empty when they're abandoning and rejecting themselves. They're empty inside and they're pulling energy from the other person. And that creates a big problem, especially if the other person is, like we said, a caretaker, and they're getting depleted, and it's a one-way street. So it's a very, very powerful process for reconnecting with ourselves so that we can truly feel that oneness with each other.
That is so brilliant. And that is really the key to healing too, is,
Yes.
so much of the time you have to move past, as we've said before, move past the physical and understand, see the psychodrama that is going on in somebody's life, and also see how they are sabotaging their healing.
Yeah.
So that's another piece of what we look at, is trying to look with practitioners about how to become a thought detective. What is this
Right.
person beaming out to themselves all the time that is completely sabotaging their healing, their relationships, their lives? So that is all part of understanding and becoming a better healer and boosting their own success rate. The other thing I do suggest for healers is to create a Power of Eight group themselves. So one thing we do is we create a private community page where the people who are part of the course can connect, because, healers are also depleted. They're giving out all the time. And so a lot of our people who take the course, and they're, everything, we have doctors and nurses, podiatrists, alternative practitioners, energy healers, Reiki, the whole gambit of people, psychotherapists, physiotherapists, all taking this course. And we find that putting them in groups and having them be able to do healing on each other is also really powerful, because they need it too.
Yeah. And as a result of being in your Power of Eight group for so long, I have done just that. And on Saturday mornings, I get together with many of my facilitators, and we have our own Power of Eight group, and it's wonderful.
Absolutely. And people really need to do this. I mean, one of the things that happened with us, of course, is we started it during lockdown.
Yeah.
And it became a lifeline. And I've noticed that with many Power of Eight groups. I have one guy who was in a 2020 group, and he said, and this is in the class that meets all year, the Power of Eight Intention Master class. And so people get put in groups, and then they work weekly, and I work with them through the year just to make sure everything is going well. And this guy, Jerry, said, I've had more love this year during lockdown than I've had in my life, because that little group of strangers coming back week and week and week after week after week, intending for each other. He said, I now know what love is. And I mean, he actually joined the next year because he wanted another group. He had one, he wanted another group. And I hear that so much from so many of the people who are in Power of Eight groups, whether it's healing. And this is the other aspect of it too, is it's not necessarily just their physical form that needs healing. Sometimes they need financial healing. Sometimes they need career healing. And that's all part of being that thought detective, is finding out what is it that's really in need of healing. And so I haven't seen an issue that can't be healed. It doesn't work 100% of the time, but I haven't seen an issue that can't be healed with a Power of Eight group, to be honest.
That's so wonderful. I so love what you're doing and what you're offering, Lynn.
Oh, well, and right back at you, Margaret. It sounds brilliant what you're doing. And as I say, the evidence was clear with Erica.
Yeah.
Bringing us back to what we were talking about. You kept such a clear head. You provided her with the facility and all of the tools she needed to heal. And I think that was amazing. And it also demonstrates the extraordinary mind-body connection. You know,
Yeah, and also Erica came from a very abusive background. For her to survive, she had to keep that connection. She had to stay. I mean, everybody in her family was nuts. And she came out of that needing to do healing, but still so strong in her own deep knowing. And that's what served her so well, is that she has not given her authority away. She knew that she is the authority. And this is what people need to get. We are our own world's best authority, not anybody else. And that is what I teach people. You are the authority on you. Nobody else has the right to tell you who you are or what's right for you.
wow. And that's so true. And in a crisis, how she was able to hold that, how she was able to say, I don't want these anymore CAT scans. This is dangerous for me.
Right.
And how she was able to, in that situation, both of you defy all of those doctors and medical professionals
Right.
because you knew what was the right thing for her is so inspiring. And the other thing I wanted to say that was so inspiring is looking at brain plasticity,
Yeah.
and how not only the subtle movements that Anat Banyel was giving you, but also the light energy, the cold laser energy that was happening.
That's
What
right.
we're really going back to is the idea of energy being a super healer. And when you start thinking about that and understanding that thoughts have been demonstrated to be another form of light, that, there's some good evidence about that now that I teach in my course, you suddenly see that healing is so much more multidimensional than we understand it. And that when you can marshal these kinds of forces, a miracle happens, like Erica out there tending her horses 2 weeks later
Yeah.
when she was supposed to
And
be home in bed.
when we took her out of the hospital, and this friend of mine thankfully was driving, and she was in the front seat with Erica and I was in the back, and I was just holding my breath because we didn't have the suction machine. Erica kept choking and not being able to breathe in the hospital. And I'm sitting in the back seat thinking, oh my God, we have this long drive to the other hospital. And I said to her afterwards, I was so scared. And she said, I focused every molecule of my being on being able to breathe. And she never choked the whole time.
That is just more amazing evidence of the power of thought and the positivity and the certainty that you demonstrated that she understood and got and you both knew you needed to get out of that hospital if she was
Yes,
to
that's
become
right.
alive. You needed to get out of there. And so that extraordinary belief, the power of those thoughts were really, I think, central to her healing. And
And then when we got her out of the other hospital, because she was only there for 2 days, she says, I can't stay in a hospital. We needed a suction machine. And I got her out without even having one. And I had the faith. Again, we relied on friends. We got the suction machine. That night it broke, and we called the fire department, and they came and fixed it that night. I mean, I think the power of spirit is just amazing.
it is. And we don't have enough faith in it. We don't have enough faith in it. I've always found, Brian and my husband and I have always said, there are angels watching us.
Yeah.
They're always there. They're always helping us in our hour of need. There really are. And
Right.
this was a wonderful example of it, but also a wonderful example of both of your resolve and the power of your positive thoughts, not to give up, to always know that she could be healed. And so she
Right.
was. So
Yes.
she was. So I just applaud it. And by the way, for anybody who wants to read the story, the whole story of Erica's healing and Margaret's involvement is in our October issue of What Doctors Don't Tell You. So have a look on our website. It's there, and it's an amazing story. So Margaret, tell us where people can find out more about you.
They can go to innerbonding.com. We have a free 7-day course where they can begin to learn inner bonding. Of course, there's many books. I have 12 published books out, and there's many courses. a course called Love Yourself. There's a relationship course, many courses. And one of the things that I have that I love is that every other week I have an inner bonding community where I come online for an hour and a half. I bring people through an inner bonding process, and then I talk on a topic, and then I do laser sessions with people so they can see the inner bonding process at work. It is so powerful.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. Well, everybody check it out from my community. Thank you so much, Margaret. This is Lynne McTaggart helping you to live the new science. So keep listening, and I'll continue to give you many tips and information each time about how to incorporate this new information into your life. And don't forget to check out the courses I'm running on new thought and intentions. So we're just kicking off our latest course for professional practitioners called Become a Better Healer with the Power of 8, which starts November 5th, and I show you how your thoughts and words and your patient's thoughts and words, if you are a practitioner of any sort, are actually your most potent medicine, and how to harness them to boost your healing success rate. To find out more or book your place, go to lynnmctaggart.com and follow the link under courses for Become a Better Healer. For everybody else, my Power of 8 Intention Masterclass will be kicking off soon after. So stay tuned, go to lynnmctaggart.com and find out more. Thanks for listening. I look forward to hearing from you next time. Bye, everybody.
Hi, everyone.